Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can someone let me know if you can hear me?
Yes.
I'll make a start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alhamdulillahi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما. Okay, so we'll start off with what we went over last week, Sunday. So the last lesson, what we covered. So we covered the introduction to Aqida and its importance. So first of all, we looked at where the word Aqida came from. So the root word is Aqida and its plural form is Aqidun. And it means to tie up something tightly with a lot of certainty and affirmation. And in other words, it can also be just described as belief or doctrine. It is to possess a firm belief of the level of absolute certainty tied tightly to the heart, in which one expresses no doubt. So you believe something so firmly that you tie it very close to your heart, and that's how it links to the first meaning where I mentioned meaning to tie up tightly. Then we looked at the history of where the concept of Akida arose. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, Islam was being spread to other regions and lands, and in this time, the concept of Akida wasn't really needed because when the Prophet ﷺ would convey his message to the people around him, they took it without any conflict or doubt in their minds, and when it started to spread to other lands, there started to be a bit of confusion amongst the people because the belief in Islam came into conflict with their previous beliefs. And so we looked at a few examples. So the Mu'tazila, for example, a group of people where they claim that Allah is free of all his attributes and he's present everywhere in everything. So they believe, so they use actually no, never mind. We know that Allah is closer to us than our jugular vein, which is mentioned in a hadith, but they believe that although this is in the metaphorical sense, they believe that Allah and his being is within us, like inside us, like in the literal sense, which is not true. And so the concept of Akida came about to remove these, confusion and doubt that was being created by other groups in other regions, for example, like the Mu'tazila. And then we looked at how much, so the concept of Akida is a very broad concept. So we discussed how much of Akida should we learn. And so I mentioned how every Muslim should learn the basic 6 articles of faith. So belief in Allah, his angels, his books, his messengers, the last day, and good and bad is from Allah. And these are the 6 things that we should look into and research and learn about into detail. But there are other components in Akida, which isn't essential for everyday learning, but they are recommended to learn about in case if there's any doubts or questions that may come into mind about certain topics. These components, these other components will help remove any doubts that come into mind or any questions, and as a result will recover his iman and strengthen his iman. Then I discussed how the companions, the Prophet ﷺ taught the companions to learn about the faith before they learnt about the Quran. So I mentioned a hadith where Jundub radiallahu anh said that we were with the Prophet ﷺ and we were strong youth, and then we learnt faith before we learnt about the Quran. Then we learnt the Quran, and so that our faith could increase.
Oh, no, go sit down.
So this hadith, it shows us how it's important to actually learn about what Islam is and what is Iman and Aqida before we actually go into learning about the Quran, because we also discussed how learning Aqida is a condition for our good deeds to be accepted, and to further learn about like the Quran and Hadith, we should know what our faith is, so that we can fully understand what comes after it, because the faith and the Aqida and everything, it forms the foundation of what's yet to learn like afterwards. So the Aqida of so the preaching of all previous prophets and messengers were all the same. So they preached the same core beliefs, the oneness of God and worshipping that one God. And this is the Aqida which we are on. Learning and so it's essential for us to learn how to worship before we carry out those acts of worship. So in Surah Anbiya verse 25, Allah says, we sent not before you any messenger except that we revealed to him that there is no God besides me, so worship me. So Allah orders us to, learn and worship him and worship him alone. And then we looked at the relationship between Iman and Aqida, and they are the two foundations upon what Islam is built upon. And the difference is that Aqida is a science that explains what Iman is, and Iman is just the concept, so belief. So the key difference is that Aqida is the science. It's a very broad concept. It's a science that explain what Iman is, and Iman is that concept. So yeah. And then we looked at the sources of Aqida. So the two main sources are Quran and Hadith. And we looked at Hadith where we looked at a Quran ayah, Surah Muhammad ayah 19. So know well, O Prophet, where Allah says, so know well, O Prophet, that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah. So again, it preaches the same message to worship the one Allah. And then we looked at the importance of Islamic Aqida. So as I've mentioned, the first and most basic condition for ibadah to get accepted is Iman, Aqida. Aqida is basically the science which explains Iman. And learning Iman, Aqida is a primary condition before gaining knowledge. It will help you to understand what Iman is and its characteristics. It helps to understand harmful factors for Iman and reasons for losing Iman. So we mentioned in one of the classes where Iman always fluctuates, so it can increase and decrease. So when you understand and learn about what Iman is, what Aqida is, it can help you to identify any harmful factors which can, result in your Iman to decrease. And Aqida brings security and peace for the heart. Like I said, it removes any doubts, it brings clarity, and as a result, it brings a sense of security in the heart. And pure and correct Aqida is a necessary condition in Islam to establish Islam. So to establish your belief in Islam, you need to know what the correct Aqida is. So today we look at the first pillar of Iman, which is belief in Allah. So belief in Allah. So who is Allah? So Allah is So first of all, like, where does the word Allah come from? So it's a divine word, and it's not necessarily like a word that, you know, came about from a specific language. It's not an Arabic word, it's a divine word. And scholars explain this word in different ways. And some say that the root word is alaha, which means to worship. And other scholars say it comes from the word aliha, which means when someone
Who
is
is Aisha? Come on, this is a great one. Who is Allah? Come on.
It's the God.
okay. Who is Allah? Okay, so start again. Who is Allah? So first of all, where does the word Allah come from? So Allah is a divine word, and it's not a word that came from the Arabic language or any other languages. And some scholars explain that this word can come from the root word Allah, which means to worship. And other scholars say that it comes from the root word aliha, which means when someone is amazed and feels extreme happiness from someone. And whereas other scholars take the word aliha and they translate it as to seek refuge from someone. So there are many different interpretations and difference in opinion in where Allah, the word Allah, comes from. So Allah comes 2,700 times, more than 2,700 times in the Quran. And most scholars agree that it comes from the word ilah. And ilah could be the one could mean that is the one who's worshipped wrongfully or rightfully. And it's a unique word. And in this context, it's a unique word, and it's the one who can't be worshipped wrongfully. So as I've mentioned previously, it's a divine word, and so there's no specific like definition for this word. So to know who Allah is and his attributes, we can learn it from his 99 names. So some of them include the most merciful, so Ar-Rahman, the most kind and loving, so Al-Wadud, the most wise, Al-Hakim. So the most high, so Almighty. And everything is created by him, and including mankind, his the skies, everything around us, so nature, the trees. And also he is the first being, like there is no being that comes before him. And when everything is destroyed in the earth, when the day of judgment comes and everything comes to an end, and there'll be nothing that comes after it, he is the only one that will remain. So he's the last. So that's what it means. He's the first and he's the last. So what it means by that is that he's the first ever being, and everything that comes off, everything that he has created comes after him. So including the universe, even like billions of years before humans were created, everything has come after him, and he is the last, which means that when everything is destroyed and finished, he will be the only one to remain. And he does not give birth, nor was he born. So in Surah Ikhlas, the ayah is Lam yalid wa lam yulad. So he does not give birth, nor was he born from parents. And he's the supreme creator. And whatever he wants to happen, he just says be, and it becomes. So kun fayakun. So he says be, and it becomes. And he doesn't need any aid from anyone, any help with anything that he has created. He doesn't need any help from anyone to do anything that he wants or decrees. And what he's created, he doesn't need any help with that. And everything good, all good things, they come from Allah. So there's a dua for wanting goodness in every aspect in life. So Allahumma inni as'aluka al-afiyah. So this word afiyah encompasses everything that is good, and everything that is good is from Allah and it belongs to Allah. And he is the only one who deserves to be worshipped. So he's given us so many blessings, countless blessings. He's given us oxygen to breathe. Every second we're breathing is only by the will of Allah. He gives us our hearts to blood to beat. Every heartbeat is not done except by the will of Allah. So the one who gives us this life and everything around us, so food, a home, family, friends, he's the one who's given us all of this, and so he is the only one who deserves to be worshipped. And there are many verses in the Quran and Hadith where Allah introduces himself to humankind. So we can look at this ayah is in Surah Hashr, I think. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. So he is Allah. There is no good except he, the King. So Al-Malik, Al-Qudus, the Holy, As-Salam, the source of serenity, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir. Subhanallah. So these are all attributes. So Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir. These are all his attributes. Subhanallah amma yushrikun. So glorified is Allah, far above what they associate with him. Huwallahu al-Khaliq al-Bari al-Musawwir. He is the creator, the inventor, and the shaper. Lahul Asma'ul Husna. He has the most beautiful names. Yusabbihu lahu ma fis samawati wal ard. Whatever is in the heavens and the earth constantly glorifies him. So all the animals, like so the birds in the morning, they do constant dhikr of Allah. Everything like to the fish in the sea, they all glorify him. They all do dhikr of him. Wa huwa al-Aziz al-Hakim, and he is the mighty, the all-wise. So Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir, these are all part of the 99 names of Allah. So here are a few that I've mentioned. So what was the purpose of Allah creating us human beings? So Allah has not created humanity in vain. So in vain means like without purpose. He didn't create us for no reason. So the creation of humanity is the greatest creation of Allah. And he has not created them without any purpose. So Allah says in Surah Mu'minun ayah 15, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. So when Allah created all this, so Allah said, so this translates as did you think we had created you without any purpose and that you would never be returned to us? So Allah literally tells us that he created us with a purpose. So when Allah created all the souls and they were all together before he created us, all the souls were together, and so he asked all of them, am I not your Lord? And to that all the souls responded with, surely you are Lord, we testify. So even before we were brought into this earth, every single one of us, every single soul has testified that Allah is their Lord and he should be worshipped. And so that is our sole purpose of our existence, the fact that we should be worshipping Allah alone, and that's the main purpose of why we have been created. So again, so why did Allah send us to this world? So Allah mentions in another ayah, Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayah 56, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And I have not created jinn and mankind except that they should worship me. So it's imperative that we should be worshipping Allah, and that is the reason why Allah has sent us to this world. So next we'll look at ibadah. So I've mentioned this term quite a few times in the previous lessons. So what does ibadah actually mean? So linguistically, ibadah means submission and surrender. So we've looked at other terms that also mean submission. So Islam also means submission. Mu'min is the one who, submits themselves to Allah. So these all of these terms, they all mean, they all have similar meanings. So ibadah linguistically means to submit and to surrender. And ibadah encompasses all of what Allah loves, and it is accompanied by its beliefs, whether it's inwards or outwards. So what do I mean by inwards? So number one, by inwards I mean the 6 components of Iman. So actually believing in the 6 pillars of Iman. So believing in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and good and bad is from Allah. So this is the inward belief, Iman, that we should have in these 6 areas. And also to have, hope and fear. So we looked at in one of the lessons to believe in Allah is to have hope in Him, to have fear in Him. So to have a balance. So so when we do a reward, so we carry out a act of worship. So salah, for example, we hope that Allah accepts this salah from us, but at the same time we have that fear, like, did we complete this salah in the best way we could have? Did we, carry out all the actions in the salah the way it should be performed? So we should have hope in Allah's mercy, that He's accepted the deed from us, but we should also fear that what if our deeds have not been, done to its best form. And similarly, when we make a mistake or we sin, we hope in Allah's forgiveness and mercy. But at the same time, we shouldn't take advantage of this and think, oh well, Allah's going to forgive me, I can just do this, carry out this bad deed, because in your head you think Allah is all merciful, all forgiving. But no, we should have this balance. We should also have fear in His punishment, and fear that His in accountability of the deeds that you do. So that's number 2. And number 3, internal ibadah can it refers to supplication. So dua, so making dua, and dua can be made anywhere. It's not that you have to make dua like right after you pray and you have to sit there and contemplate. You can make dua anywhere, when you're traveling, going to school, when you're on the bus. Like it doesn't require anything, like wudu or anything. You can make dua anywhere at any time. And dua in itself is an act of worship. So I mentioned a hadith a while ago, dua al-mukh al-ibadah. So dua is the essence of worship. So dua is basically an act of worship, is what the hadith is saying. And you get reward for it. So you can see Allah's mercy. He not only, you're asking Allah for something that you want, but He also rewards you for asking for whatever it is that you want. And so supplication, making dua, is another internal type of internal ibadah. Another one is tawakkul, so having trust in Allah. So trusting in Allah, whatever He has given you, whatever He will decree for you. So to trust that Allah will give you what is best, even if you may not think in that moment, you may not agree with what's happening, or you may not like what's happening, but you should, in that moment, you should trust that even if it doesn't look like, it's going well or it's something bad, you should trust that it's something good for you. So for example, if you fail a test, driving test, you really wanted to pass, although it doesn't, although you're not exactly happy with it, you should trust in that moment that perhaps it was for, the better, that like Allah had, Allah had placed good in it, even if it doesn't seem good to you. And the second one is, so that's the different types of internal ibadah. So 6 components of Iman, so the 6 pillars, having hope and fear in him, so that balance that you have when when you carry out good deeds, bad deeds, you have that balance, you hope in Allah's mercy and forgiveness, but at the same time you should fear, accountability, so that you don't take advantage of his, mercy. But at the same time, you're not so like afraid to the point where you feel, you feel scared that, Allah will never forgive you, you're doomed, things like that. You should have a balance. And supplication, so making dua and having firm trust in whatever he has given us, whatever he has decreed for us. So the second type is outward ibadah. So outward ibadah refers to, physical action, so like salah, performing the 5 prayers, fasting, and fasting Ramadan, but also carrying out nafil fasts, zakah, hajj, etc. So these are all, physical acts that you carry out. That's the second type of ibadah. So we know the common ayah, so Ayatul Kursi, and Ayatul Kursi, it has the word kursi, which is the chair, and his arsh. So what are these 2 things? So read the ayah out first. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. So Allah, there is no God but He is the ever-living, the sustainer of all existence. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. So neither drowsiness nor sleep overtakes him. So he never sleeps. He is always present. He's always present. He's everywhere. He's aware at all times of everything. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. To him belongs whatever's in the heavens and whatever's in the earth. من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه. So who is the one that can intercede with him except by his permission? يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم. He knows what is before them and what is after them. ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. And nothing will and nothing will encompass, no, his knowledge encompasses everything. That's basically what this is saying. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And his kursi, so the key word his kursi extends throughout the heavens and the earth. Sorry, let me move this. How do I move this? So وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and his kursi extends the heavens and the earth. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا, and the preservation does not tie him. So him looking over it and controlling everything, he does not get tired of it. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ, and he is the most high, the most great. So this is in Surah Baqarah, ayah 255, an ayah that a lot of us are familiar with. So in this ayah, we can see that his kursi is mentioned. So what is the kursi of Allah? So there are differences of opinion what the kursi is. So some state that Allah's kursi. Okay, first of all, let me discuss what the arsh is. So Arsh and Kursi. So his Arsh it refers to the throne of Allah, and it is so big and magnificent that it's difficult for us to fully comprehend what it is and to even imagine it. And his Kursi, there are differences in opinion about what the Kursi of Allah is, and some state that Allah's Kursi and the Arsh are the same thing, whereas others say that the Kursi means the footstool. And Imam Tabari radiallahu anh describes this term in an intellectual way, as he said, no one should imagine that Allah has feet which resemble his creation, and there is no room for personal opinion or imagination. So Kursi, some scholars say that is the footstool. Now, with our human minds, we may automatically think of a literal footstool, and why would a footstool be associated to Allah? Because Allah, doesn't have any feet. So, this scholar, he says that you shouldn't really think of it in a human sense, like related to like in the human sense, so take it in the literal way of footstool. Rather, it's something that's beyond it's just there to show the comparison of what it is. Okay, so we'll resume. So where I left off at was we were talking about the Arsh and the Kursi. So the Arsh refers to the throne of Allah, and as I said, it's so big and magnificent that it's difficult for us to even comprehend it and imagine it. So it was firstly on water. So his Arsh is on the water, and then comes Allah and his mighty throne. And Muslims have to believe in the way that Allah describes himself to be. So the way Allah has, described himself in the verses, so Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illahu, that's the way we should we should believe in Allah, by linking him to his, attributes. So first of all, no one fully knows what the Arsh and the Kursi is, but a term is given to it just to get an idea. So as I've said, it translates to the throne of Allah, and he created this throne. So the existence of the Arsh only came about when Allah had created it. So obviously Allah came first, then his Arsh. And as I've said in the previous slides, he is the first. So everything that has existed comes after him. So that includes his Arsh. Something as big and magnificent has come after him because he has created it. And scholars say that people shouldn't be encouraged to imagine and visualize Allah in the way they want. Rather, what we have been given, the information that we've been given, that's the way we should think of Allah and imagine him. So what I'm basically trying to say is that we shouldn't go on to like thinking of, how big Allah is or like what he looks like. We should only, um, busy ourselves with what Allah has given us in the Quran and Hadith and what the words that he has used to describe himself. And so, in summary, his arsh is the throne, and it's a very, big thing. It's a very big and, magnificent thing. And there isn't a fixed, like description of it, but the term that we have been given is the throne. And now in this ayah, the word kursi has been mentioned, and there are differences in opinion of what the kursi is. So some scholars say that Allah's kursi and the arsh are the same thing, whereas other scholars say that the kursi means the footstool. Now, some people may think, why would Allah need a footstool? Does Allah have feet? We shouldn't take it in the literal sense, because we shouldn't imagine Allah to have feet. We shouldn't have imagined Allah to be like sitting down. He has no human attributes or qualities in that sense. And just as how Allah describes himself as all seeing and all hearing, humans also can see and hear, but the difference is that his seeing and hearing is nothing of that which is of human hearing and seeing. Like there's only a certain range in which a human can hear, and we can't hear beyond that range or below that range, but Allah's hearing encompasses everything. He can hear everything. We can't hear the unseen, so we can't hear the angels talking, for example, but obviously Allah can hear that. Allah can hear the jinns, the shaitan that are talking, but we can't hear that because it's beyond the human hearing range. And similarly, our sight. So even though Allah describes himself as all seeing, and sight is a human quality, his seeing is nothing compared to our seeing. So for example, when you look out the window and you see the furthest object that you can see, so from my window I can see the furthest is like this big tree, but I can't see beyond that tree. So Allah's seeing is beyond what I can see in the distance. And so a hadith came about where a Sahaba asked for like, what is the kursi and what is the arsh, and how, like, he asked for the size of it, I think. And so the Prophet ﷺ responded with, so say you were to, so I'm just gonna say what the hadith mentioned, not the literal line by line, but in the hadith it was mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you were to throw a ring in the Sahara Desert, the ring is the size of the heavens and the earth, and the desert is the size of the kursi. And in the same way, if you were to throw a ring in the heavens and the if you were to throw a ring in the Sahara Desert, the ring is the size of, so that's the comparison between the kursi and the heavens and the earth. So the earth and the heavens, and so how big the kursi is compared to the heavens and the earth. Now the second comparison is the comparison between the size of the kursi and the arsh. So if you were to throw a ring in the Sahara Desert, the ring is the size of the kursi, and the Sahara Desert is the size of the arsh. So this was just to give like a image of the comparison of the sizes between the arsh and the kursi. So kalima shahadat, so this is the first, the declaration of faith. So, and it is the first condition to enter Islam, and it's the verbal declaration, and it is a a key factor in a person becoming a Muslim. So when a person converts to Islam, the first thing they must do to qualify as a Muslim is to read the Shahada. So there is none worthy of worship besides Allah, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger of Allah. And saying these words is not enough, but to say it with with meaning, and to know what it means, and to actually act according to what it means. So la ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah. So actually implementing this la ilaha illallah in your life, so submitting to Allah, putting what Allah wants over your own desires and worshipping Him. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is his messenger, is the final messenger, and is his messenger. So the way we can actually follow this second part is by following his sunnah, following what he has said in the hadiths. So what is the foundation of la ilaha illallah? So what does it mean? So first of all, you have negation. So the negation comes from la, which means there is no. So no. And the negation comes first, followed by the exception of affirmation. So la ilaha illa means except. Illallah. So to reject anything that is besides Allah, so any false god, anything besides Allah, so to free Allah from any association from other things. So that's the first part. And the second part is affirmation. It means there is absolutely none worthy of worship besides Allah, and it is only for Allah. So La ilaha illallah. So la ilaha, so there is no God. Now, obviously, we obviously know that we shouldn't be following any other gods. The only true God that we should be worshipping is Allah. But there is another indirect thing that a lot of people are victim to following and worshipping above Allah, and that is our own desires. So what I mean by this is that there may be something that you do which conflicts what Allah has ordered us. And it's very easy, because in this day and age, sinning and corruption has become so prevalent and so common that sins have become normalized, and following things and doing things other than what Allah has ordered for us to do has become easy for us, and we've become desensitized to these things that we shouldn't be doing. And so one key thing that we should keep in mind is that we shouldn't be following our own desires above Allah. So we shouldn't be, what I mean by desires, I mean things that conflict what Allah wants. And so this can essentially conflict with the shahada, so the la ilaha illallah. So if you're following what you want over Allah, you're not ultimately worshipping Him and rejecting everything besides Him. And so we should keep this in mind before we do anything that conflicts with what Allah has wants us to do, or what Allah has commanded. So we've also looked at this term quite a few times, Tawheed. So what is Tawheed? So what is Tawheed? So Tawheed is belief in Allah as the creator, so this should be creator, the master and the Lord of the world. And He is free from any association to any other thing, so He has no partner, and all power belongs to Him, so He has control over everything. And to declare this oneness and this uniqueness is Tawheed. And Tawheed in Allah also means maintaining the oneness of Allah and not creating Allah into one being. So we shouldn't, summarize everything. We shouldn't, put everything into one and call that Allah. What it means is that we should maintain the oneness of Allah, as in, there's nothing that is similar to him in any sort of way, and this uniqueness and this oneness only belongs to Allah. And there are three types of Tawheed. So number one, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. So the word Rububiyyah is derived from the word Rabb, so which means master, owner, and the one who has authority. And this is the belief in that this is the belief in the oneness of Allah with respect to his lordship, and he alone is the Lord, and he is one without any partner in his dominion, in his actions, and he is the only creator, the true owner, who nourishes us. So when he creates us, he doesn't create us just as the way we are now. Like, we all came from previous stages, so we all started from a fetus, and then we developed into a baby, and then a toddler, and so on. And in each stage, Allah has given us the means to develop, so he's nourished us throughout these stages, and he's the one that maintains and sustains. So he gives us provisions, he gives us the means to survive, oxygen, as I mentioned, the oxygen that we breathe in, a heart that beats, is all by his permission. So he maintains and he sustains. So he gives us what we need to survive. And not only does he give it to us, the few times, he continuously supplies us with the provisions and the means to survive. And everything happens by his will. So there's a hadith where it mentions, even if a whole nation gathered to go against you, they will never be able to overcome you and defeat you, except if it was by the will of Allah. So similarly, even if a whole nation gathered to benefit you, they wouldn't be able to benefit you except by the will of Allah. So if Allah wanted something to some goodness for you, if he willed some goodness for you, and all you see is obstacles in your way, even if you do see those obstacles in your way and you don't see any path to goodness, that decree of Allah is there, and even if you don't see the path to that goodness will still happen because he's decreed it for you. And the second type is Tawheed al-Uluhiyah. So Uluhiyah comes from the word Ilah. So this is the oneness of Allah. To believe, so Tawheed we looked at is the oneness of Allah. So Tawheed al-Uluhiyah is the oneness of Allah with respect to him being the only one who is an Ilah. So he's the only one who is a God, and rejecting all other gods, whether it be idols, or associating partners, or even if you take your own self as a god. So this is the actualization of Tawheed, found in the actions of the humans and the servants of Allah. So Tawheed al-Uluhiyah is to actually manifest the oneness of Allah within your actions. So this means, declaring that there is no God but Allah, and also to manifest this within your actions. So, as I mentioned previously, to obey Allah and His commandments over your own desires. That's an example of this. And for example, like some people, they will go to a very pious person, to pray for him, to ask Allah for forgiveness for him, just because he's seen as a righteous person, as a pious person. And this concept is actually very wrong, because in an indirect sense, you're associating this person, to such a high level, to the level of Allah. Like, you're using him to pray to Allah when you could be doing it yourself. And back in, so this is where the wrong concept of Christianity came about, where the people they would go to Isa alayhi salam to and ask Allah to get rid of their sins. And this concept was wrong, and in the end it resulted them in actually worshipping Isa alayhi salam and associating him to Allah, because they used him at they used his high status as a means to pray to him, and to get him to ask for forgiveness from Allah, to get rid of their sins, to ask Allah to reward them, bless them. These things, they all can result in worshipping that which is besides Allah. So the example that I used is, there's some people, they use pious people to go to the graveyards to make dua to Allah to enter them into Jannah. This is also a very wrong concept, which is very common, and which is seen among a lot of different sects in Islam. And all of these things, they can they all conflict the oneness of Allah, and this conflicts Tawheed al-Uluhiyya, so worshipping Allah alone and manifesting this oneness and believing in his oneness through your actions. And the last one is Tawheed al-Asma wa al-Sifat. So believing in Allah's oneness with respect to his names and attributes. So we looked in Surah Hashr. There were many attributes of Allah, so Al-Jabbar, Mutakabbir. So one must affirm that these attributes are perfect and complete with Allah, in association to Allah alone. So these attributes in its best form belong to Allah alone. So, and these attributes are all unique to Allah, and no one else can have these attributes. So, for example, the difference between Asma and Sifat is, so I'll give you an example. So a boy's name is Anas. So Anas is kind. Anas is the name, and Sifat, and the Sifat is kind. Yeah, and the Sifat, so the attribute is kind. So I'll mention that again. So an example of an Asma and a Sifat is Anas is kind. So Anas is the name, so Anas is the Asma, and the Sifat is kind, which is the attribute. And we shouldn't imagine Allah as anything besides what the Prophet has described to us. And there's plenty of evidence of what Allah has been described to us as. And that concludes today's session. If you have any questions, I know I ran a bit over time. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask and write in the chat box.
When was the first time that Allah was known?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't catch the last bit.
When was Allah like people knew him? When was that time?
Okay, so Allah, he, like I said, he's the beginning. So there's nothing that came before him. And the way people came to know about Allah is obviously, when he gave, so we're the nation of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, yeah? And
Yes.
how we came to know of him is that when Allah gave the book to the Prophet, the book which is the Quran, to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in the Quran, there are ayahs mentioned, La ilaha, La ilaha illallah. We've covered a lot of ayahs where Allah describes himself, and he describes him. So in one of the ayahs we looked at, let me get that out. We looked at Allah describing himself in Surah Hashr. So Allahu alladhi la ilaha illahu. Yeah, he describes himself as the one where there's no God except him. So that's how people came to know about him, because he sent the Quran, which had information about him, which spread amongst the people, which the Prophet ﷺ helped teach other people. So that's how we came to know about it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We came to know about Allah. Yeah?
Jazakallah. Yes,
Okay.
Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I please ask you a question?
Yes.
This is
What's your name?
Diana,
Okay, Diana, what's your question?
you know how Allah made Adam alayhi salam first?
Yeah?
So he made him with clay. So you know how Adam, so you know Eve?
Yeah? Hawa alayhi salam. Yeah.
Yeah. Did Allah also make him with her with clay as well?
Yes, he did. So it's not the literal clay that we see, like in pottery and things. It's Allah's clay, yeah? So it's not the same clay, but the word clay is used so that we can understand what it is that he used. But it's not actually the clay that we see. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is one of the 3 types of Tawheed. So it comes from the word Rabb. So Rububiyyah sounds quite similar to Rabb. So it comes from the word Rabb. And Rabb means master, it can mean owner, the one who has authority. So Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is belief in Allah, in the oneness of Allah with respect to his mastership, so to his lordship. So believing that he alone is the ultimate Lord, and he alone is the only creator, and the only, the master of everything, the owner of everything, so the owner of all human beings, the only one that, gives us what we need. So he gives us, the means for us to survive. So provisions, oxygen, everything that we need to survive, and he maintains what we need to survive. So he continuously gives us what we need to, in order for us to live, and he's the only one who nourishes us. So when a human develops throughout his lifetime, he's the one who he gives us the means for us to develop throughout the stages of life. So he's the only one that can do this. So that is the oneness of Allah with respect to his lordship. Does that make sense? So believing in Allah alone as the ultimate, Lord, the ultimate owner of everything and the one that provides everything. Barakallahu feek.
Yep.
If anyone has any more questions, then you can write on the group chat. Otherwise, I'll conclude today's session. If you have any confusion or need further clarification on any of the slides, then please feel free to write in the group chat. Otherwise, I'll end today's session. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.